What is neonatal assessment and how does it help for the newborn children?
When we talk about neonatal assessment, we are talking about newborn babies. I'll just explain this with a simple incident. We have a preterm baby who is 1 day old and now cannot suck milk from the mother's breast. The first thing is to figure out what is the problem. This is exactly where neonatal assessments come into picture. Now, this is with respect to feeding. So, this is the feeding assessment that we do. Then we can also talk about pain assessments. It's a painful stimuli, right? We don't like pain. So, even the child does not like pain. There are pain assessments, standardized assessment scales where you can actually measure quantitative parameters. So, then what do? All we can do is comfort the child. But how do you do that? Unless you do not know that this is the root cause. So that's when pain assessment comes into picture. So the earlier, the better.
How has your experience been with your son and how do you deal with that?
Flashcards and visual aids are helping better in grasping the learning and academic. And that's so first we have started with the visual cards, flashcards. At home also for ADLs we put pasted in the washroom. We pasted the sequential of you have to wear slipper, then remove your clothes and take how you for bathing for different ADL activities. So yes, visual aids helps a lot. The visual formats, I say the visual formats, child becomes more independent with the visual formats. It gives more precise predictability, less and child is less anxiety, and it helps to build social communication skills also.
So, welcome both of you to the Dolly Show today. It's an honor and a privilege to have you both because we're going to discuss a very new concept today. So, yes, we have Dr. Deepa with us today. Thank you so much for being here with us, Doctor. And we have our parent who is Yasmin Rais. So, thank you so much, both of you. And yes, we have a lot of things that we'll discuss today. So let's start with you first, Dr. Deepa. My first question to you today will be, what is neonatal assessment and how does it help, the newborn children to maybe diagnose or what exactly? How does it work?
Okay, so first of all, Dolly, thank you for having us over on your show. And now addressing your first question. So just to make it simpler, for you to understand, when we talk about neonatal assessment, we are talking about newborn babies.
Correct.
And when we specifically talk about assessments, we are also addressing babies who are either in the NICU or we also call as the neonatal intensive care unit or probably the premature intensive care unit, the PICU. Or also newborn babies who have not suffered any prematurity or any other incident in birth.
Correct.
Now, I'll just explain this with a simple incident. We have a preterm baby who is 1 day old and now cannot suck milk from the mother's breast. So now breastfeeding is a problem.
Yes.
And what is of paramount interest for a newborn baby is the nutrition of the child.
Correct.
Right? There is breastfeeding done in every 2 hours. It has to be regular. But now since the child is not taking breastfeed, the first thing is to figure out what is the problem. And this is exactly where neonatal assessments come into picture. So this is where we evaluate. Now understand, in this given example, let's just understand what is the entire process of sucking milk from the mother's breast. It's not as simple just because we all have been able to do it and we see kids on a regular basis, especially the typical growing kids. The very first feed after birth is quick. So we feel, okay, it's not great. But technically, it has 3 aspects. These are simultaneous actions of suck, swallow and breathe. So the child is coordinating all the 3 of them together. Now imagine a preterm baby. Maybe the child does not have good intensity to suck from the mother's breast. Or maybe there is tone involved due to some prematurity. So the child is not able to swallow the milk that he has sucked. Or maybe the coordination of suck, swallow, breathe requires a lot of, coordination and neuronal involvement. Plus, there is motor component, there are sensory components working here. Maybe that's a reason. So, before you want to address this issue, we'll have to first find out what is the underlying cause for any problem that our newborn babies come up with.
Correct.
And that is where neonatal assessments come into picture. So now this is what I have, given you an example with respect to our suck, swallow, breathe. So here you can do oromotor assessments. Then you can do tonal assessments. So we know maybe it's the tone because of which the child is not able to swallow. The tone of the child is low itself. Or sometimes kids are born preterm with very low weight. So the intensity of the suck would be a problem. The child does not have the amount of musculature for enough vacuum to be created to create a suck. And we always call suck as a reflex, but there is the entire action of breastfeeding is suck, swallow, breathe. So similarly, now this is with respect to feeding. So this is the feeding assessment that we do in the neonates. Then we can also talk about pain assessments. Now for a very long time, we all in the healthcare believed that our neonates and newborn babies didn't feel pain. So we have recently now with research understood that no, they do understand pain, and that pain response is also affecting their development on a neuronal level.
Oh,
yes, it is. Just like it is for you and me.
correct.
We don't like pain.
Correct.
It's a painful stimuli.
No, we don't like.
Exactly. It's a painful stimuli, right? We don't like pain.
Correct.
So even the child does not like pain. But he's unable to express. How do they do with their facial expressions? How do they do? There are pain assessments where standardized assessment scales where you can actually measure quantitative parameters such as heart rate. You can also check for facial expressions of the baby. So then you can actually conclude that, oh yes, the child is experiencing pain. And that is where also early intervention comes into picture. That if you want to soothe the baby, because there are some necessary procedures, there will be pricks, there will be blood collection, there are some necessary routine procedures which are unavoidable. So then what do we do? All we can do is comfort the child while that procedure is happening. So then, but how do you do that? Unless you do not know that this is the root cause. So that's when pain assessment comes into picture. Then again, we can move to neurobehavioral. I've been talking about neuronal.
Yes, is what my next question was.
Yes.
So, wanted to talk about neurobehavioral and how does it help in assessment and the development of the child.
Yeah. So when we talk about neurobehavioral, let's just simply break down the two words, neuro and behavioral.
Yeah.
So now a newborn child will not tell us, is not cognitively well off to tell us this, that, right? Is a newborn baby. So the behaviors of the newborn baby that are indicative of his neurodevelopment or his neuronal status are neurobehavioral assessments. And these are standardized assessments. So everything that I have spoken of right now is not subjective. It's not based on, I think it is like this, or I think it is fair, good, or poor.
Yeah.
We do not grade it like that. These are global standardized assessments. There are scales which have been globally accepted. So the entire healthcare team, which is working with the newborn, understands their terminology and it's standardized. Because something that is good for you might be fair for me.
True.
So how do we quantify that? So when we are talking about all these assessments, they're quantified. Similarly, when we talk about neurobehavioral assessments. So now neurobehavioral assessment, just imagine a newborn baby. What will be the behavior that the baby shows?
Oh my God,
It
have you
could
ever
be-
thought about this?
Yeah, that's where early intervention starts. All of us talk about early intervention, and I'm very sure that a lot of parents on the spectrum have heard this term, early intervention.
I would say this can be termed as earliest intervention.
But that's where we pick up.
Yeah.
That's where you can screen the child and make sure that you keep following up with the neurodevelopment of the child and keep giving that support. Because maybe in the long term, we can reduce the effect,
Correct.
which may, later be diagnosed at very late stages. So this is where we start. When we talk about neurobehavioral, Now, neurobehavioral, how will the child behave? We have to look for some neuronal aspects, which is the tone. There's something called as muscle tone. So it's just the tension. When we move the joints, you understand, and the muscles, you understand if there's a tension. It can either be increased, it can either be reduced. We usually see children who have suffered some kind of hypoxia, or a lot of times when the umbilical cord just gets entangled around the neck.
Nice.
So for some seconds, the child did not get oxygen supply. Or during birth, there was some complication due to which the child suffered some issue where there was ischemia. Ischemia is lack of oxygen, which then, that lack of oxygen created some issue. So we call it hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. A lot of kids, it's based on 4 grades, and we see a lot of these kids will show very different motor patterns also. They are abnormal motor patterns. Then scientifically, we also have some signs. They are called scarf signs. There is Gallant reflex, which is normally not present in a typically growing newborn child. We will only see it in an atypical neurodevelopmental child. So those are the signs that we then pick up on. That, there's a history of some sort of ischemia. Plus, I also see this sign, maybe the child could be not a typically developed neurodevelopmental child. Later, in the later outcomes. You cannot diagnose things like these in the very beginning. So when the child is a newborn child, the only diagnosis is, the technical terms. Is hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, or the child has suffered, can be seen, has Down syndrome. So you can make it out. You can make with the facial features. So that's where
Down
tone
syndrome,
comes.
many which ways can be detected early as well, right?
Yes, early.
Before, during
But
pregnancy.
Given,
the
given
NT
in our
test.
setup, it's very difficult in India to screen so much, and not so much of screening usually really happens.
Because I have done the
Yes,
neonatal
it does.
assessment for my daughter when she was born. I have done the NT test because me being on the juvenile diabetic this thing, so I had to get it done. So I know about this for sure.
Yes.
And the list of those 140 tests that come,
Correct.
and you're able to identify it early. To be able to catch
That's
it early.
true. So there are some abnormal signs that you pick up, and that is only when you assess the child. And when I talk about these assessments, again, they're standardized, right? So you have the Brazilian neurobehavioral assessment scale. It's called NBAS. It's very widely used among neonatologists and everybody working with the child, and also the therapists who work with neonates. So there you can quantify this behavior. We can have a total scoring, and based on which we can also see that, the child is here now, and after the intervention, where has the child come? Is it soothing? Has the child become worse? Or the intervention is working? Or maybe it's just the same. None of it is working. So when we talk about neurobehavioral, if you do an assessment, you will be able to then do an intervention to help the child. And this intervention is very widely known as the neurodevelopmental supportive care.
Okay.
The neonatal neurodevelopmental supportive care. And that will include a lot of things which will help in soothing the child, which is also soothing the irritability of the child. If the child is crying, but every newborn baby will cry. That's not a problem. But is the child consolable? When the child is not consolable, no matter what you do, yes, you feel, maybe. Then there are tremors. With every little sound here and there, child has tremors. Or the child is startling with sounds that other kids are not. Because, when you have the newborn or the ICU or even the premature units, you have several babies, several cots, right? But so you can make out that no other child, this is a regular stimulation, no other child is having a startle. This is exaggerated reflex, exaggerated startle. So that is an indicator of some neuronal deficit, or there is some, this is too early to even call it a deficit. But yes, this is an indication that there could be some changes on the neuronal level which can be atypical. which are not typical as per regular development. And that's when the intervention part of it comes. As you told me, that how do we help the kids? So when we talk about this support care system, why are we talking about it? Because then we help the child.
Let's before starting the support care system, I want to know how exactly. So you spoke about the assessment. Does this assessment so early help detect autism, or are there any typical signs or symptoms that you can detect them early?
Okay, now autism again is, has social interaction. You have lack of social interaction. There are many other factors that go in the diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. So at this stage, there is no diagnosis that happens as a newborn baby. Even if the child is looking at me, not looking at me, it does not matter. So no diagnosis of either autism or cerebral palsy happens at this stage. The diagnosis, as I've previously mentioned, is that whatever incident the child is suffering, for example, the child has suffered hypoxia, so there's a scan, you have a USG report based on which you can decide hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, you grade it. Okay, then sometimes the child is just preterm, low birth weight. No other diagnosis coming with it. Now, there are a lot of other issues that come with prematurity itself. The retinopathy of prematurity. There are many issues of prematurity. Plus, if there is low birth weight, that is also an issue. So, this is how you label, or I would not call it label, but this is how we address the child. No autism is, addressed. But yes, so we have a lot of studies where retrospectively, a lot of parents with children on the spectrum, when were interviewed and asked questions, they had given some history of some similar events in either perinatal or postnatal period. So that's where we connect that if there are these symptoms, if we see children having some neurobehavioral issues, if we see children also having some feeding issues, we will keep a follow-up. That is what it indicates, that we need to have a close watch at the child. Maybe it's just, something that will recover with intervention. But a lot of studies state that retrospectively, when parents were asked or when history was taken, a lot of parents reported NICU stay or neonatal ICU stay, or no birth, immediate crying after birth. So a lot of parents give this history. A lot of parents will also say there was some event during the pregnancy. There is also a relationship of consanguinity of marriage of the parents. So that's where this connects the dots. Now this is in very later stages. But for us as, in the NICU, when we see a neonate and we pick up on these signs, we just have to put the child into intervention and make sure that we reduce the amount of neuronal affectation or impairments and improve as much functionality as we can.
Yeah.
Because this is where it affects the long term.
Yeah. Maybe we can avoid it in. Probably.
That's the idea of early intervention. When parents say, "Hum early intervention kara rahe hain."
Yes, which I'm going to talk about.
So early intervention यहाँ से जब शुरू होता है, and there could be a lot of cases of our parents who will not give history of any such abnormality around birth or even during pregnancy. That is also prevalent, but there is a very high incidence. Now this is based on the researches that I'm talking about. That there is very high prevalence that you see that kids on the spectrum, when parents were interviewed on the backdated history, they did give some evidence of some events in their perinatal or postnatal. So that's why early intervention, and the reason that this intervention is called neonatal neurodevelopmental supportive care. We are not saying the child is atypical. We are not saying the child is typical. It's too early to label, or in fact, labeling is something that I would not even support. So we don't want to just, call it, okay, this is typical, this is atypical. We are just saying maybe the child needs support.
Yeah.
We'll give him the support, and maybe
So
he'll be
that we
fine.
we can then avoid
Yeah, and some
something
may
happening in
just
future.
and a lot of neuronal impairment can also be avoided because these things could be difficult to then pick up later
Later.
when the child grows older. So the earlier the better.
Perfect. True that. I totally resonate with this.
Since you've
Super.
also been through
Yes.
neonatal assessments for your baby, you'll be able to relate to
Yes,
this more.
yes. I could really connect the moment I saw. I was like, yes, this I very well know. And I really know the importance of this as well. So that I can catch it early. And if there is something, I can
You can give adequate support at
Yeah.
that point,
act
and
upon
then
it.
put in the intervention which is required for that
Correct.
amount of time.
Correct.
And then let's see where it has to go, because now development is very tricky.
Correct.
You can't predict how it will be. There's no prediction. We can only talk on some facts that okay, this is the possible outcome that we expect based on the current condition of the
Correct.
child.
Nice information. Some extra details that I have got today from Deepa ma'am. Yes, coming over to you, ma'am. So, I do know that you started, the therapy really quick.
Yeah.
So, first and foremost, let's go back to your journey. And then, what made you take this really wise decision of starting therapy early, and how has it, improved your child?
So my child was diagnosed with ASD at very early stage when he was just 18 months old.
Okay.
But before that only I could see some abnormal signs. His physical milestones were okay, but his neurodevelopmental signs or neurodevelopmental milestones were not up to the mark, or I would say normal, because he was not waving bye-bye at the age of 12 months.
Okay.
He was not pointing towards the object. If I say, where is the fan, where is the AC, or where is the airplane, car, whatever. So he was not pointing towards it. He was not responding to his name call.
Okay.
And majority of the time, I observed that he's sitting alone. He prefers to sit alone and giggle a lot. So these were not normal signs, because I have my elder daughter, which is normal. So I had gone through the milestones, normal milestones. So we approached to our family pediatrician. He evaluated with some questionnaires, and then he landed up, okay, your son might be under spectrum. So he referred to us to a developmental pediatrician for full assessment. We took an appointment and we went through and it took a month for full assessment and for the final diagnosis. Meanwhile, I already started reading about the autism. What is autism? What are the causes, signs, red flags, and symptoms, everything. And when the final diagnosis came, it came as a speech delay, not autism. But I was in my mind, I was sure he is having some red flag or some signs of autism. So the developmental pediatrician advised us for speech and occupation therapy at his center. He said, okay, you enroll for the 6-monthly program. You see how he is progressing. And then we'll decide about his further this thing. So because he was very young, 18 months. So initial few months he took to settle down, all meltdown, tantrum. And because the first time he was detaching from parents for 45 minutes or 1 hour for the therapy. So we completed 6-month program over there. We realized that he has some improvement. He's in eye contact, name recalling, and then we decided, okay, why not to start therapy at home? So,
which is, I really want to know about this. I'm so curious.
Yes. So we because considering, see, every decision has its pros and cons.
Yes. Definitely.
So considering its pros, that home would be more friendly for the child would be, environment, child would be more comfortable in the home. Plus there would be flexibility in considering the therapy hours and everything. And the most important thing, the parent also can learn saying through what therapist is doing, and we can daily basis we can consult through the therapist whether this is right or wrong, and we can see the progress also. We continued this both therapies, occupation and speech therapy, for over a year. But yes, the pros, we were lack of resources, especially for the equipments of occupational therapy. There were more distractions. The home setup is obviously it's not well organized as the therapy center is organized. And most of the activities I have observed, the child is over a period of time, child is seeing the parents around, child is more reluctant to do with the therapist.
Correct.
So after a period of 1.5 year, we decided to take him to the center, which is more organized, and we landed up with the Disha Center with Dr. Dinaz Wadia. She is a speech pathologist.
Yes.
And we started speech therapy, occupational therapy over there, plus weekly program of peer program, where peer social gathering was there with all the peers of the same age. And we continued there for 3 to 4 years over there. So this is how I started very early intervention, and yes, early intervention does help a lot with child's behavior and other social communication development skills, and in fact with ADL also.
Okay.
Yeah, it does help.
Fantastic. So here we have a very important discussion that we are having. Why is early intervention so important? We have 2 examples right here who have proven that yes, it is very helpful. So my next question to you would be, what is visual perception, and how does it affect children on the autism spectrum, be it like their writing skills or their social skills? How does it impact?
Okay, so now let's just break the term. Visual perception. Visual is vision. Okay, there's a motor component to it. There's vision, the sensation per se involved, and then perception. Perception is perceiving and processing that information which you see.
Correct.
Okay, so this is visual perception. Now both of these together are a function of the brain. Okay, now vision is per se sensory, but perception, when it comes together, it's a function of the brain.
Correct.
Now there are various types of perception. Visual perception is one of the branches of those. And under visual perception, we have several more perceptions. So for example, I'll tell you very basic is visual identification and discrimination. So here you can identify familiar objects. Okay? And discriminate.
Correct.
That okay, this is familiar, not familiar. So how does this affect? Now, if this is affected in our kids on the spectrum, they do not understand the difference between family, strangers. They may understand sometimes only with the mother. You will say, "Nahi, isme mummy ko hi samajhta hai." Very often we come, hear parents say that. So this is how it's affecting. Not able to differentiate. And if I talk about a little older, moderately affected or mildly affected kids on the spectrum who have this deficit, they will not be able to differentiate in their closet their pants and pajamas and pick them up, because it requires you have to identify and discriminate. You have to discriminate. It's about similarities and differences, but that does not come. Now there is a concept of visual fixation. Like right now I'm looking at you, so my gaze is fixed at you. This is fixation. This is simple. A lot of parents also, now she will also say this, even when kids go for assessment, the first thing that we say is eye contact established. Why? Because of visual fixation.
Okay.
So established hua, I gave you an eye contact, but not maintained, because that is also a function of visual perception of visual attention. I have to pay attention at your face to keep looking and maintaining this eye contact. So a lot of our kids develop visual fixation, but not visual attention. And then visual attention also, if you see, is broadly, we can call it of 2 types. One is selective and one is global, what we call is localized visual attention globally. So, a lot of times our kids will only look at one tree, focus on it so well that they do not look around the forest, which is lying right next to the tree. Because selective attention. And sometimes this is where we will also see some of our kids on the spectrum who can pick up very minute details because they have selective attention. So they can pick up on the minute details, but not on everything that happened.
Correct.
Yeah, that's one. Then sometimes they miss out on the minor things and just look at the broader picture. That is again a part of visual attention. Then comes something which is very simple: visual scanning and sorting. Okay, so when I have so many things here on this table, there are mugs, there could be some more pencils and papers. So you need scanning. I need to be using my eyes, tracking, okay, to find that object. This is scanning. I'm trying to scan. And then sorting. So I understand that these mugs look similar, so I will put them aside. Maybe I'm not able to name them, that this is a mug, or this is white in color, or this is a square shape. But at least I can appreciate that they are similar, and then just sort. Very basic. But you will see a lot of our kids cannot sort. I agree that we also see speech delay in our kids with spectrum. So they cannot name. We usually, when, in playgroup or in the earlier nurseries, how our kids taught. This is red with those pieces. This is circle. So our kids cannot imitate the speech part of it. They cannot vocalize it. But at least they can appreciate. They should be able to differentiate. Put all the circles together. Or put all the reds together and the blues together. You have to show. Put blue here, put red here. But a lot of our kids on the spectrum are not able to do this, especially the ones who come for early intervention. Because this is a very primitive and a basic visual perception that we usually see in the earlier years. Okay, so also when we talk about this inability, when we talk about discrimination also, now you've seen our high functioning ASD bachos who also go for the NIOS examinations. Now, a lot of those teachers will complain that there are reversal of letters. The confusion between B and D, P and Q. It requires discrimination. But this also requires attention, visual attention. Okay, then there is visual memory.
Okay.
So, the bigger problem, now this is more so a lot of, parents whose kids are either appearing for NIOS exams, who are on the spectrum, appearing for NIOS open school examinations or Pratham examinations, or academically involved, they will agree to this, that kids often make a lot of spelling mistakes. They're able to say it well. Okay, they can pronounce it, but there are spelling mistakes. Why? Visual memory. You need to look at it. I need to have the attention. Pay attention at that word. Remember the alphabets together. Register in my memory. And then put down. This is visual memory. Sometimes it misses. And what happens is a lot of times, even visual memory, this is with respect to academics. Now imagine a child coming into this space, into a room. Maybe the child does not have good visual memory. So then, how will he, our kids on the spectrum also fear unpredictability. They like patterns.
Yeah,
Okay? They like routines. So anything which is new, which is strange, which is unpredictable, creates anxiety. And hence we always see hesitation. There is some resistance. Could be a crying or meltdown that we see. But now, if our bachu does not have good visual memory, so he will not have memory of things in this room.
Correct.
He may not recall that. Now, in this case, the only recall that he will have of this room is the experience that you give him in the room. So then he's banking on his experience, whether negative or positive, whether he was crying in the room or whether he left the room happy.
Yeah.
But he does not remember that, there was a trampoline. That, there was a swing. Especially kids going to therapy centers will see so much. There is so much sensory input right in front of them, visually, that you're not able to process it all. So then they all bank on experience and not visual memory. Ki, wahan pe jhula tha, I'll go there. This is what we used to do, right? I like that swing. I'll go to the park because only that park has that swing. Our kids will not have that. And that is why it becomes difficult to then keep getting them back to the same place, because sometimes they might cry because it's unpredictable, and they might continue to cry coming to the same place, because that feeling of unpredictability or that feeling of newness hasn't stopped. Visual memory, you need to remember also this is the same place. The only thing that they remember is this is where I cried. So they associate it.
Agreed. So how do you address this issue?
Now, for example, okay, we missed on visual closure also. So now let me start with that first. So now very simple is, if I see just half of the mug from afar, and I'm able to make out that this is a mug, but our kids are not able to imagine it as a mug. So now our kids who have this issue will not be able to understand if there is a clothing that has a collar lying outside, that this is a shirt. They will not be able to figure that out. Also, if you see in the bathroom now, the baby toothbrushes are small, okay, as compared to the parents one, but the stand is the same, okay. So the baby one goes down, and the only thing the child can see is the bristles. So maybe the child is cognitively well off to discriminate and identify, but does not have closure. So just looking at the bristle, he's not picking up.
Yeah, because that doesn't match the description of the toothbrush.
Yeah, that does not, right? He's
Yeah.
not able to imagine it as a whole. And then the parent will say he does not do that also. But otherwise, when you check the child, maybe his identification discrimination is good. It's the closure which is creating a problem. On kids who are high functioning on spectrum, you will see they have geometrical problem, because you have to understand the entire angle, the circle. Just understanding angles is a problem. And then again comes visual spatial. So kya hoga? Your graphs, you don't understand. Where is it? Even you will relate that, kids read and then miss out, get lost on the page.
Yeah.
They usually get lost on the page. Now that there are two things. There is visual tracking that comes into picture here, that you have to use your eyeballs and be careful about it. There is attention also coming here. There's spatial also, visual spatial. Because they are not able, it's all same, right? After a point, textbooks are all same.
Yeah.
So then you go and get lost.
Yes, true.
And especially with graphs. That is why a lot of kids in the spectrum who are going for NIOS examination will say graph is a problem. They cannot plot on the graph. Because that requires space, right? It's all blank. You need to understand, okay, this comes here, and then you have to put it here and join. So this is how it's not just affecting their reading, writing skills. Okay, and visual spatial mates, so you'll also see the kids, they will go above the line, or the distance between their two words is too far, or it's too close, because they're not able to understand. In the same line, two words could be way wide apart, and some could be like just next to each other. But they cannot understand that, this is not equal sizing, this is not equal shaping, and I'm missing out the line. So these are the problems. Now, how do we help? So there are two things in such situation. We have to understand, do we have to go for a compensatory approach? Where we are not trying to rectify this, we are just trying to come up with alternatives so that the child is, however, functional. Okay? Or two, where we are trying to facilitate. We are trying to promote this visual perception. Okay, so now when we talk about compensatory techniques, it's more so that we also suggest to the specialists, the special educators. So something very simple is, if you want to increase visual attention, kids love play.
Yeah.
And the child, as long as the child is able to perceive. Now, all that I've said right now is multi-dimensional.
Correct.
It's multifactorial.
Yes.
Now, this is not stating that ye problem hai, so it has to be visual perception. There could be sensory, or there could be vision involved per se. I'm just saying that out of all these major problems, vision perception could also be one of the primary underlying reasons. And this also has to be dealt if we want this to get better. Okay. So in this case, when we talk about what do we ask the special educators to do is, if you want to increase attention, make it colorful. So very simple, colorful sheets. Not, first of all, declutter the table the child is sitting on. I would never suggest a child to be sitting on a desk that also has a pen, a paper, a pen stand, and many other things. No. Declutter. Again, scanning is a problem. So declutter. Just one thing. Focus. Then, if you want him to pay attention, make it colorful. Let the big pictures work. Big page, just few words, that's it. And something that he can also feel. Because even if vision is affected, the child will use tactile and have an experience that we just spoke about. Okay? So that can be used. Then you also have to take in auditory into, consideration. We can have very brightly colored worksheets. So the sheets that kids do, you can have brightly colored. So then yellow. Yellow is for maths. Okay, so all yellows
I have a
in the bag.
question
Yeah.
which cropped up just right now.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
supposedly it's yellow and you connect them that yellow is maths.
Yeah.
But when they actually see in the school setup or probably wherever, it's not yellow. Then how do they connect?
Okay, now
back?
I'm talking
So
about...
then it will be like, oh, here it's not yellow. So what is this? This is not maths.
Okay.
Just a question that
Yeah,
popped up. Sorry.
It's very much valid here.
Yeah.
Good that you asked. So now here I'm not joining the two elements together. It's just an example that we have categorized it. So when there are different colors, you pay more attention.
Okay.
Okay, that is just to improve attention. I'm not doing a conditioned learning when I'm saying always yellow is maths and always this is this. No, if you want to do two worksheets with the child, let them be of different color. So then the child can differentiate, because a blank white paper with a black text is not going to get the child any attention.
It's not going to get our attention also, I think.
And for kids who miss out, like visual spatial, they will miss out. Even if they are using their finger, they will lose the finger also because it's gone, right? So the easiest thing to do is what we also suggest at Priyanj, that we use cutouts.
Okay.
So everything, if suppose there's a paper, so the only line that you have to read is visible, and everything else on the paper is covered. And covered with a plain color, not a bright color, because then again that is distraction. We are not trying to create distraction.
Correct.
We are just trying to let more attention come in. And for kids who can also read well, but they miss out because they don't have attention, then you can use markers. Highlight. Let them highlight. Because we cannot change syllabus.
Correct.
Textbooks cannot be changed. Neither can they be replaced by any other learning book. Especially for the exam going kids. Because why do we limit our children just because they are on the spectrum, if they're cognitively good enough to appear for examinations? But we can use these compensatory techniques. And this is what we also suggest to the special eds. That these are some of the techniques that you can use. And we have seen difference. Zohair himself has suffered this, and he has seen difference. Also with not just reversal but omission. You miss out, right? You miss out on a word. Go ahead. Right? And then when it comes to visual memory, when we were talking about spellings, forgetting spellings. So if you're forgetting spellings, so when you know this is a new spelling for the child, it's comparatively bigger. Flashcard. First show a flashcard. Just flashcard, no text, nothing on the table. Just flashcard. Let the child pay attention to it. Introduce it. Give it an auditory stimulation. Okay, there is not just vision, but there's also auditory involved.
Yes.
Okay, so make it interesting for the child. Let him connect. And then put it in text. So the next time it comes, he will not, just because it's difficult, he will neither just let it go off. Even we do that, right?
Yes,
Isn't it human nature? Achha, बहुत difficult hai.
I do.
Now, Czechoslovakia was a spelling that I ignored all my school days.
Yes.
Okay, so our kids also, difficult. Let it be. So no. Yeah, I know this. Not new. I have seen. Okay.
I have seen,
Visual
but then...
memory. So this is how we would want a special educator to then incorporate these things when they are, looking after kids, wherein we have already assessed the child to be having some visual perception issues. And also, if we combine this with some sensory issues, Okay, some kids.
Let's talk about sensory issues separately, because it's totally a big segment that can
correct.
be
I agree.
spoken about.
Yes.
Let's come to you, ma'am. So yes, visual perception. How has your experience been with your son, and how do you deal with that?
So, as she has explained in very
Depth.
detail, the visual perception has so many areas, like she
Yes.
mentioned visual closure, visual memory, sensory processing. So, if you ask about how it helped in academic, so I would say before his actual academic started, he was already been with a therapist because we have started very early.
Yes.
So he was with a therapist for 2 to 3 years, and after 2 to 3 years, he was actually in the academy. So meanwhile, he had already covered so many areas of visual perception. So he was good in dot joining. He was good in puzzle solving. But yes, while reading, while copying text from board, he was not good at that. So that's when the occupation therapist role come and intervene. That we followed the home program and everything, and we realized that flashcards and visual aids are helping better in grasping the learning and academic in that. So first we have started with the visual cards, flashcards. At home also for ADLs we put pasted at, like in the washroom we pasted the sequential of you have to wear slipper, then remove your clothes and take how you, for bathing or for different ADL activities. So yes, visual aids helps a lot. The visual formats, I say the visual formats, child becomes more independent with the visual formats. It gives more precise predictability, child is less anxiety, and it helps to build social communication skills also with the visual aids. And that's how this AAC came into picture, because AAC also had the interface of this visual aids with the visual perception, and it becomes easy for child, especially for the child who are non-verbal. So it becomes very easy, for grasping academic also, for grasping the social communication skill also with the visual aids. And gradually, when the child progress with the, as she said, first you have to show with the picture cards and then go on the text. So gradually, once they are adapted with the visual aids, and then we can wean off the visual flashcards and everything, and then we introduce gradually with the text. So they go for non-verbal kids, they can type and communicate.
Yeah. So fantastic. So if you put all these techniques, get them assessed early, put the techniques into place, so then later
most of these
helps
parts
them in
yes,
academics,
it helps them
and
in
it's
academics.
easy for them to then cope up
Yeah.
and use all these techniques and then excel.
For comprehension, like she said, those kids who are high functioning, they go appear for the NIS exam. There they get a comprehension paragraph, like poetry comprehension or whatever comprehension. So before appearing to the NIS, and we work a lot on the memory retention, visual memory retention with the flashcards, with the sequence. First we start with the 2 cards, then gradually introduce 3, and then we go up to 6 to 8 cards. That's how they format story. That's how they remember that this will come after this, after this, after this. What are the sequence? These visual aids also help in their route and map finding while going for the this station will come first, and after this station this next will come. Everything we can put in visual aids.
Okay, and my next question to you would be, how did your son, he was in a mainstream school,
Yes.
and from the mainstream school, he has come to Priyansh Special School.
Yes.
So how was that transition?
So while he was receiving in-home sessions therapy, we also enrolled him for the playgroup, which was near our house. So it was like he was receiving therapies at home. He was going to school for other co-curricular activities like art and craft, fine motor, and all playgroups. So his routine has become more structured. But then he completed playgroup, nursery, junior KG, senior KG. Now it was the time to enroll him for the grade 1. Grade 1 with the 40 students strength in a class, ICSE syllabus.
Oh.
and less, or I would say, not much trained faculty in the mainstream. So we were known ki yes, he won't be able to cope up with the mainstream school with the poor social communication skill, poor cognition, poor sitting tolerance. Then that's the time we seriously started hunting for the special school. Though the school said ki you can repeat the senior KG one more year, but that's not the solution. How long we can go on repeating?
Correct.
So then we land up one school at CST, and there for the first time I actually came to know the difference between the mainstream and the special school, how they are working. They had IEP, individual education program for as per the each child. They had a sensory room if the child has meltdown, what to do. And everything they had under one roof. He did his special school over there for 2 years. Then we shifted to Priyansh, and I must say that was the most wisest decision for my son that I took him in Priyansh, because everything was under one roof. Priyansh, therapy, academic, and they not only supported the special need children, but they also support the parents. We don't feel isolated there. We don't shy to share our child's behavioral issue with other parents and seek their permission. And the school is very flexible with the school hours with different child. They have 2 batches, 3 hours and 5 hours. Those child who are not able to sit for 5 long hours, they enroll for 3 hours batch, and eventually if they are ready to sit for 5 hours, they promote them to 5 hours. They are very open for parent suggestion, and they incorporate also most of the time. And because these all flexibility, keeping the school decorum, school policy, and school discipline, they are ready to incorporate every time.
So individualized approach. So
Yes,
one child if is doing something better,
yes,
and if not, then they're trained again,
yes,
and you make them better.
exactly.
So individualized approach.
Yes.
So they see what progress and accordingly do the needful next.
Yeah.
Which is
So the difference
amazing.
between if you ask between the mainstream and the special school
Yes.
is the student and teacher ratio
Mm.
and the trained faculty. These are the 2 main things.
Mm.
Which, and I must say that especially the child who are under spectrum with they have multiple disabilities.
Yes.
Not like the other child who has only one disability, like disability in reading or disability in writing, dyslexic child, or any physical disability. They can very well cope up with the mainstream, but not the child with under spectrum. They need a special school setup.
If I may just add.
Yes, I would want to know your review on this as well, because as a professional, I would love to know why a special school. I understand each child is different and their needs are different, but we need to know the importance of special school.
So, first of all, we are all in for inclusive education.
Yes, for sure.
And we are not secluding our child or categorizing kids just because they are on the spectrum. So when we say that a special school should be a choice as compared to a mainstream school, especially for kids on the spectrum who have also various other sensory processing issues and various other issues. That is primarily because the child has some set of needs that need to be catered and need to be tailored as per his need.
Correct.
We cannot give a generalized way. Now, very simple, as we've just spoken about visual perception. Now, there's so much to visual perception, right? You need a professional to tell you that, listen, आप बच्चे को बोलो focus करो. This is what you do at a mainstream school. You will say he does not pay attention in school. He just keeps looking here and there. But why is it?
Wow.
Maybe he's cognitively good enough where he has that processing. He can interpret, but he needs to perceive it to interpret. So how will, and I don't even expect a regular teacher to understand that. The fact that we have professionals to treat and educate kids on the spectrum or who are atypical is because there is a need for so. They understand what is hyperactivity. They understand, okay, this is a meltdown. At a regular school, you might just get multiple complaints that he does not sit in one place. He keeps shouting, he makes some kind of noise, or he keeps putting his hands in the fingers in the ears. We are not liking this. He keeps disturbing everybody, and just because he's making these noises, he's fidgety with things, so other kids cannot learn. So here what happens is nobody is really focusing on the problem area. Okay, it's just more of a complaint, becomes a very negative trait for the child. Nothing against mainstream schools, because the teacher will never understand. They are neither qualified nor experienced to even understand what this is and why is this behavior precipitating. Sometimes the child may have sensory issues. A special educator will understand that. A lot of technical terms that I use at Priyaj, our special educators, the team of our special educators understands that. I don't have to sit and explain them at length that what this terminology means. They do understand that, right? And also, as she correctly pointed out, the teacher-student ratio. Here we can also have one-on-one attention, and there is no such chapter and there is no syllabus that everybody is running to get. Here we are just trying to make this potential. And not the best of what I think you should be doing. That you should be getting 90%, you should be writing presses and essays and letters. No, it's not as per my standards. It's as per what your potential is. And this understanding, this customization of the education program can only happen at a special school and not at mainstream school. And also, the way since we have less number of kids, it's always, it's not as vast as that of a mainstream school. You have comparatively lesser number of students, comparatively more staff per student. So then the entire team is working holistically over that child. Okay, I am not doing my thing and the special is not doing her thing, and then the parent is doing something else, and we are all lost, and so is the child. Everybody is in sync, and we know what are the problem areas, and we set our goals. So then everybody is working towards that, and we are also integrating the parents into this. Now, this is a process of lot of patience. It requires scientific knowledge. It requires clinical skill, which a regular teacher cannot have because their expertise are very different. And what I would say the most is a lot of parents do fear just sending kids, not because they have not accepted that the child is on the spectrum, the child is atypical, but just because they not like the fact, that the child will wear a t-shirt of a special school and go.
That stigma.
What will the world see?
Yes. Society.
Yeah, and I feel a lot of parents, I do come across on a regular basis, a lot of parents who have been through mainstream schooling, understood that it has not worked for the child, and now the school has only given up that maybe you should go to a special school. So why wait to that extent? Why do you want to waste the years that go in between, the developmental years, the fundamentally constructive years? We are losing on that. And as we are, advocating early intervention since the very beginning, so that is not going to happen. And here the child is also his set patterns, and it gets difficult to even understand and assess what are the child's potential.
I would put it as a general physician is
And
like
a
our
special.
mainstream school.
Correct.
And we have a special school which is
A special.
pertaining to a specific part of your body.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's as simple as that. The general physician will not be able to. Yes, they can generalize. Yeah, this is your problem, but now you need to go to the
But
specialist.
I hope that happens sooner.
Yeah.
Because I usually the parents that I deal with on a daily basis, and usually most of them have a history where they've been through this process, been through mainstream schooling for years, like
Just
3,
trying to
4
push.
years. Yeah, and now that you know that the child will be promoted, irrespective of his exam, how good or bad they are, till 8th,
They will be promoted.
they will be promoted, there is no retention. So parents also don't mind. Then they come to us when they're in their 5th grade or in their 4th grade. So I'm saying the child's already 9-10 years old. Maybe we could have started back in 5 or 6. So we are missing out on time. So this is also to the mainstream schools that it's okay. We have to be open and just let the parents know that maybe you cannot cater to the needs of the child.
True.
And some other body can. So just refer.
Yeah.
Maybe
It's always for the betterment of the child.
and if it comes from the school, I feel it's also to the parent psychology. When it comes from the school, I have seen more reception as compared to when it comes from a pediatrician or other professionals. Parents are a little more acceptive or receptive to this information when it comes from a school that the child has been going to. Mainstream schools, and then say school wale aisa bol rahe hain. So that has more weightage. I don't know why, but it apparently does, right? It does have more weightage because it's also perceived that as professionals we are advocating our own services. So maybe it's for our own good. That's human tendency, right? We end up thinking in that tangent. So when it comes from the school, you understand, okay, now school's not making anything out of it. So maybe they're right.
True.
They are losing out on a parent, a student, on the fee. So maybe now what they're saying is correct.
Okay, so let's talk about sensory integration. Like, how do you address the difficulties and how does sensory integration therapy help the children on the autism spectrum with perceptual difficulties?
Okay, so now when we are, we'll be centric to visual perception deficits in kids on the spectrum and also having additional sensory processing issues. Okay, so now when we have to understand that until and unless sensory modulation occurs, the child will not perceive.
Correct.
If I am restless, if I'm anxious, if I'm doing cut, I will not pay attention to anything that you're saying, irrespective of how good am I at perception or cognition, does not matter. So whenever the two collide, which they do very often, these are overlapping issues. And with our kids with spectrum, it's not black or white.
Correct.
It's all about the shades of grey that lie in between, and all of these factors keep overlapping. So we can't isolatedly only address visual perceptual and just keeping the sensory needs at a toss. It has to come in a combination. So usually when the SI therapy goes ahead, so now what happens is, even parents when observe the therapy sessions, they feel, oh, maybe, but this is only SI, right? Only sensory needs are being met. What about visual perception? How is that getting integrated? It's very well integrated within the same activity, in which the sensory need is satisfied, and at the same time we are facilitating visual perception.
Okay.
So what happens, let's for instance now have a child who is also hyperactive, has proprioceptive needs, has vestibular needs, but to increase, is cognitively good. So we know the child can fare well academically and be functional. So then you want the child to first sit in one place. Sitting tolerance is to develop before we work for visual perception. Now how will that happen? So very simple thing that we usually go for is making the child sit on big theraballs. So they keep getting this proprioceptive stimulation and then give them a visual perceptual activity. Then we make them do a scanning sorting activity, which is based on their cognitive or perceptual functioning, whatever they are able to do. So in this is how we are integrating the two. Okay, because just the child bouncing randomly on the ball is not SI.
Correct.
It has to be functional, it has to be goal-oriented, and there has to be an activity to it. This is one. Now also understand, as we also spoke for visual tracking, that our kids will not really track a moving object. Okay, they will not track a vehicle going on the road from this end to that end. Or maybe they will do this. But just the eyes, difficult. And it's not just left or right, it's up and down. It's multiplanar. So are our kids able to do that? A lot of times, no. So we promote that also. Now for children who are vestibular seeking, you can put them on the swing, give them this necessary sensory stimulation, and while you are doing that, we can also grab an object of interest. It has to be of interest. Play is the only medium of intervention. the child is not going to do anything technical that I ask him or her to do. Okay, so add play to it. Any object of interest. Start with something that's interesting. Now the child is moving. Let the object be stationary. So it's fixation first. Let him fix the gaze at that thing. Okay? Make it interactive. Maybe it's something that makes a sound. A toy. Something that also has light to it. So that catches attention. I'm gazing. Now, while doing this, I will also simply ask him if he has good fine motor activity, coordination. I can ask him, okay, take this, take the ring and put it in the box. So now you have to understand that, oh, I am moving, the object in front of me is also moving. So here we are working on tracking, visual tracking. Here you are also, while doing this, working on visual attention while satisfying or stimulating the vestibular system and catering to the child's needs. Now, when we talk about visual spatial, again, getting lost, right? So the first thing is to also declutter. Usually, the SI room is filled with colors. There are a number of things. If you think the child really has visual perceptual issues, we will declutter. Keep that one thing, that one component of swing, or probably that one component which we would want primarily to be played with. And rest everything is put aside. So the environment is decluttered. You don't have a lot of distraction to look here and there. So that ultimately increases attention. Now again with the spatial thing, okay, I'm getting lost. Okay, it's just that perception to understand where am I, where are the objects. Because visual perception is not just about writing and going beyond the lines. It's also not bumping into other things. Because if I don't understand that, okay, this is here, so if I go straight, I will bump into it. I need to take a turn, be safe, and then go ahead. Now, this is visual spatial. So how do we promote that? The very simple thing is, again, now kids who have proprioceptive needs, who have vestibular needs, so we can have them on the trampoline and then let them go through probably a hurdle path. A very simple hurdle path, which is appropriate for the motor functioning of the child, which we know he will comfortably be able to achieve. And that is the task. You keep giving them verbal and physical cues. Now, it's not that you just make them do it. There is a lot of assistance that is required, and you slowly taper down your assistance in the same. So then you give a lot of, first you may give demonstration and make sure the child, and make it interesting. Only then will you get visual attention. Only then will the child look, okay, what are you doing? And make sure it's not too long. Because then you might lose the attention. So demonstrate, give some physical cues, verbal cues, and let the child then find its way out of it. So what am I doing is also giving all the prop and vestibular sensation that the child needs. Maybe through a trampoline, I can give prop or vestibular through, swings. And then after that, after getting out of these objects, you have to make your way and go ahead and probably give a high five. So when I say give a high five, again, you have to look at me and give a high five. So you will give me visual attention. That's where you will also maintain your eye contact, probably for 2 or 3 seconds. So from not maintaining at all, I'm at least coming to 2 or 3 seconds. This is how it all, gets together. And this is very customized. These are very generic examples that I've just mentioned. But all of it really depends what sensation is involved and what visual perception deficit is involved that we are trying to bring together. But definitely without sensory modulation, working on visual perception as an isolated identity is not going to show much results. It has to be holistic. Ultimately, the child is one, no matter what intervention types we use.
True.
And that is when, we can see quantifiable or witnessable results in the child. So this is how we integrate SI, although it's extremely customized and it's a very vast task. Yeah, it's very vast and there are n number of permutations, combinations that are possible.
Yeah, we have covered quite a few.
Yes.
So, okay, so an interesting thing that I want to know from you. So, Zohair and you have started this journey called Awaz. It's an app. So, I would really love to know about that.
So when he was receiving therapy at Disha Center,
Mm-hmm.
we find that he's still struggling with his articulation, that is the clarity of the speech. So we discussed with Dinaz Wadia and I. So she said, I feel that he's having dyspraxia with apraxia, another bomb on you, after the diagnosis of autism. And since it's a clinical diagnosis, we cannot have some lab test or some other test to make it like, yes, it is apraxia or dyspraxia. So she suggested why not to start a Makaton sign. Makaton sign is a simpler and easier version of BSL. It's a British Sign Language. Makaton sign is through body gesture with the spoken words also. Like if he wants to say water, he has to do mimic like water, ma, papa, sitting, standing, like this. Initially, we have started few of the Makaton sign. And we family members also trained ourselves with the signs, and he was doing pretty well with the Makaton signs. It was like much easier to communicate with the articulation difficulty. Then she said there are limitations with the Makaton signs. Only family members can understand, can be trained, but what about the outsiders? We cannot teach everybody with those sign languages. Then she said why not to start with AAC. But we both were little hesitant, fearing that whatever little he is speaking will stop.
Yeah.
So we were both in dilemma, and for a few months, then we said, "Okay, let's start with Awaz app." Gradually, we started during the therapy session. Then we incorporated with academics also, and we found that it's actually improving his typing skill, his visual scanning, and his vocabulary also. So then now we are gradually incorporating in ADL also at home also, and he is on 2 to 3 words sentence formation with the visual thing. Typing still he has to achieve because still he is not good at that. But with the visual things, and plus its Awaz app is a customized app. You can put your voice, you can put your programs in that. You can put multiple pictures you can add then. And plus Awaz gives repeated updation, so you can update. You can take a backup of that. They have a very customer support is very supportive. They are available for if you face any issue with that. So yes, Awaz AAC is helping a lot with this learning, social communication, and academic also is helping much more with the AAC.
Fantastic. So let's come to you again, which is my next question would be, what are those home-based therapies that you would recommend for parents?
For parents of children, the spectrum with respect to visual perception?
Yes.
Okay. So with respect to visual perception, now there are a lot of mediums available out there. And I know a lot of parents that I am now dealing with tell me, oh ma'am, VR. VR has come where they actually point out for visual identification, discrimination, whether the attention is selective or global. That also those systems can predict. Okay, so it's assessment plus intervention, all of that together. But that can be a good source for home-based intervention. Also, considering the constraints of space and all those equipment and even skill at home to be doing all this. And as a parent, very basic thing is to just sit and play with the child. As I spoke about eye contact and sustaining the eye contact. Let the child just sit right in front of you at your eye level. You can't have the child sitting down. You are this tall. The child will look up. It's a lot of effort.
Correct.
I wouldn't look up on this slide for so long either.
True.
Okay. So just let the child be on your level. If you want fixation, and then maybe play a high five on this end, and then see where the tracking is going. Maybe the tracking is here. You can go up and down. Not all home-based, interventions have to be very complicated and fancy. Please, we need to understand that it's the basic things, and we, as typical, children, were not exposed to the complex things, but we've still developed because even these simple things are enough for the child to register, and we have to start with simplicity. We can't introduce a lot of complex concepts to the child. He will become defensive, not do anything. So this is one of them. Secondly, a lot of kids who are then also trying to write. We see a lot of kids who have just begun to writing. We are also working on their grip altogether. So very simple, joining dots. That will also help in visual closure. Just joining dots. Maybe you are joining dots for a star. So here I'm working on fine motor. You are working on grasp. At the same time, you are also making the child understand this is a star. So visual closure will also come into picture. Then when it comes to other things, definitely not having clutter. Declutter the area that the child is going to be exposed to the most. Because more amount of distraction, less is my attention.
Correct.
I can't be focusing in a club where there is so much of loud music, people dancing around. I cannot. So it's that crowdy for a child on the spectrum who has visual perceptual issues when there are so many elements lying in the room. There are a number of bags on the couch, and then even the bathroom is bombarded with a lot of elements. So the child is not able to perceive it, which then we think he's not either doing it or maybe he's not capable of doing.
Which is a wrong
way of doing it.
Yeah.
But I think you should also leave it to the professional to tell you, to evaluate who's dealing with the child on a day-to-day basis, to tell you that this is the problem, this is the problem area, and this is the intervention. And also making puzzles. Maybe something very simple puzzles. When you talk about perception, the wooden blocks, just picking up a car, putting the car inside, picking up a bus, putting a bus inside. Now this is all based on the functional level of the child. Whatever the child is able to perform. And so on, you can increase the complexity of the same. And also when you talk about scanning sorting, the most simple thing is just organize. Organize his wardrobe. That organization will help in identification, discrimination. You need organization. It cannot, all those clothes cannot be one over the other. And then we want to, then we have that expectation that, he should go take out his clothes and wear. Maybe he's capable. No, but he's capable of wearing.
Yeah.
He can put on clothes, maybe. But he cannot understand what to pull out and wear. Or maybe he will just, because now that you forced, he might just grab anything that comes and he'll be like, what is this? Ye kya lekke aaye? So that is where, you can make them independent in their ADL activities, so the activities of daily living. So that's where, after a point, you want them to be independent in their ADLs. So this is one of those interventions that parents can do it. And I would say that even refrigerators, since a lot of our kids will tell us, a lot of our parents will tell, he'll go and open the fridge. Jaake fridge khol deta hai. So organize the fridge. And then whatever he likes, place it in the center. Or place it somewhere. Let him scan. And do it as a structured activity. Just don't let him go and instruct. Make it a structured activity. Okay, go, open, find a chocolate. Although I don't advocate chocolate. Okay, fruit. Find a fruit. Okay, where's your fruit? Where's your banana? So let him look around. But it cannot be cluttered. There are breads and vegetables and fruits and everything lying, then he's not going to look, only shut the door and move away. No, you want to keep it, just put it one over the other in one shelf. Then it should not collide with other things. like all those dabbas in one shelf, all the bottles in one end, vegetables in the drawer. Maybe other stuff is also organized. It may not be similar, and it may not be, it's not necessary for it to be different also. So basic things. And then also, when we talk about our kids on the spectrum, the biggest thing that we see is their lack of social communication. So the minute they develop visual attention with you as a parent, okay, giving eye contact, sustaining it for probably a few seconds, fine. So now, when you know that the child has identification, also work on discrimination. Their family, strangers, use flashcards. Teacher, mama, papa, nanny, dadu, dadi, uncle, strangers. And that's when, slowly when this attention increases. And even at home, especially when our kids also have sensory needs, and then it becomes difficult to sit in one place, or even their position is awkward. They can't really sit with an erect posture on a chair and then do a pen paper activity. So maybe you just put them prone. They are getting proprioception. Put them prone where they are comfortable. They are getting proprioception. And when going prone, when I do not have much in the environment, it has to be on the floor. I can't be going prone on the bed. There's any which ways a lot of stimulation that you have reduced by the very nature of this position. Plus you have decluttered the environment. So you have to increase focus so then the child will stop. And then you can also use markers. You can use books that have texture. So that will be a feel, experience also. So then they can correlate. And that feel will not just satisfy the sensory aspect, it will generate interest. Generate interest and also make them curious. Okay, next. I will do. And then making them do. The kids who are going for Pratham examination, they are the pre-NIOS exams. So those, who squirt, they will do this. They do this before writing. That is again because attention to selective hai na. So they are looking at one aspect, so they do like this, or they will close one eye and then focus. So rather get a blackboard or get a whiteboard closer to the child, let the child be kneeling. So he's getting some amount of weight bearing, some amount of proprioception. Put a whiteboard right in the front and let him do writing in straight and let it be a blank whiteboard.
Yes.
So that helps. Now these activities in my parent here will be able to relate because she's also...
I want your input as well.
Yes, because
you are the one who has done it.
Yeah.
She has taught.
So when she mentioned that the thing should be more in an organized way, so we did the same thing. His shirts are in one corner, his pants are in one corner, and we said, "Okay, pick up your shirt. What do you want to wear today?" So he pick up. Sometime earlier he used to, like for pants also he used to say, "This is a shirt." So he said, "No, this is a pant. This is a pant." So what we do one by one activity. First you take out the shirt, wear it, then what is needed? Pant. And one thing we have done in our house that we have put a whole wall mirror, so he can see through what I am wearing, how it is a ulta sida shirt, whatever, what should it should come. So he can see yes, this label should come, it should go behind, this picture or this print should come in front. So that way he is able to now discriminate well, and he is able to, the button or the buckle should come in front. So that way he is able to identify and wear it now independently. With the visual, I must say there is Monday, Tuesday they have to wear red, and Wednesday they have to wear green uniform. So we have put on his cupboard like today is Monday for red, Tuesday is for red, Wednesday. What day is today? Monday. Pick out red one, pick out this one, green one, whatever. So yes, this visual helps a lot. He is very fond of Shrikhand. So
me too. So everybody likes sugar rush.
So he goes open the fridge and he used to find where is Shrikhand. So my husband said, why are you putting the Shrikhand behind? Put it in front, so that it's easy for him. So first we did put it inside front. It was very easy to take out and eat with some. and then gradually now I have increased the complexity. Now I am putting behind. Now it has gone in the vegetable shell. But now he is able to find out.
Okay.
So yes, these things definitely help with the guidance of therapist, and with the gradual increase of the complexity, the child reach at that goal what we have planned.
Fantastic. These life skills teach you a lot. We had never
Yes.
thought that Dadi is telling us something to do. So it had a scientific backup.
Yes.
So all those things do.
Now to his dadi also tell ki, where is my specs beta, just find out
Find.
where is my specs.
Yes. And with Zohair, it has, significantly increased.
Yes.
So that is what is transfer of learning. Na?
Yes.
What they learn with us here at Priyanj. And then they take it back home.
And as she mentioned, this special intersection relationship. That's
Spatial,
on,
yes.
under
Yeah.
this. So Zuhair, Dadi's specs is under the pillow. So we have to give some
Cues.
cues also under the pillow. Then he goes and easily finds yes. The Dadi is also happy. Yes.
It's only when we have a deficit, we understand how important the life skill is.
Correct.
Yes.
Else it's just.
Else it's all taken for granted.
Yeah.
हाँ, ये
Yeah.
तो naturally
ये तो
होना
naturally
ही है.
होगा.
हमने
Yeah.
तो ऐसे ही सीख लिया.
हाँ.
Okay, so what strategies that you have adapted at home, to be able for communication, and how have you all done that?
As I mentioned in my earlier question or answer, that he has been introduced with the Megaton science. We are incorporated in home also, one program also, Megaton science. So Zohair is good with the body gesture, pointing, body gesture, and he's very good learning and catching your facial expression. Very good. Even if I say keep, so he'll move to the left, right. He is that much good. So now if you are asking daily basis में how we are understanding, since he has an issue with the dyspraxia, it's very difficult to tackle. And so now we have learned what is particularly, this is cup. He won't say cup full. Either he would say the simple monosyllable word like ka, ka. So it's difficult for us to understand. So he uses his body language or he's pointing ka, and then so he'll say it properly ka, pa. So now we are more adopted to understand his language rather than teaching him, because we are, since I have mentioned that he has an issue with the dyspraxia, it's difficult to teach him language or spoken language. So he's using his sign languages, he's using his AC, and yes, we most of the time, I think home also and school also, most of the time they are understanding his need or what he's speaking.
Just, I think, yesterday night or today morning, I read this quote that why is it that we try to teach individuals on the spectrum how they are supposed to, behave or talk. Why can't neurotypicals adapt to what to their needs?
Yes. Yes.
So this is the correct answer
very true.
to that.
They
Why
are
can't
an
we?
example to it.
Exactly. Why can't
Because
we adapt?
this gives them less frustration.
Yes.
This
And more acceptance.
more acceptance.
They feel
they
more
do-
positive.
Yeah.
Yes.
That feeling of seclusion.
Yes.
That, oh, just because I'm not capable, so
Yeah.
Acha, you don't. Because our kids sense negative.
And
So if you
Yes.
the negative
Yes.
comments, the vibe and
They
the
do
energy of
understand.
it is very
the
much
facial
so.
expression as well. They catch it really
they do
quick.
understand the negative
Yeah.
comments. They do understand the discrimination,
Mm.
exclusion. They do understand. So that's why I think the awareness is there, but acceptance is still not there in society.
Yeah, inclusivity is a lot spoken about,
Hmm.
but I think it's not just with respect to schools.
Yeah.
It
True.
is about life.
Yeah.
Inclusivity and just letting them be. You don't understand it, it's fine. I don't expect a typical human who's not involved in kids on the spectrum to even understand. We're not expecting you to understand. Maybe just letting them be. Not treating them differently because they can sense. Maybe they cannot express, but a lot of
Yes.
times they can comprehend.
They can comprehend. True.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, both of you. We have got lovely insights and lots that the audience can take back from this session. So, thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dolly, for calling us over. We also had a great time chatting.
Thank you.
Thank you.